how can we recognize the presence of your larger self, or the big self, or the self? First of all, it comes through as something bigger than the usual sense of myself. And as it comes through, it feels very right, very true, and also very natural. It always feels as yourself, but more real self. Not as a feeling of myself, but in that instant, it feels that everything is totally aligned, and what comes through is true. One of the aspects of the self is directness. There's no intermediary. There's no salesperson. And there's no middle management. So those in business recognize the value of direct, of this directness, and to avoid the middleman, because that's where things get complicated. So in the same way, the self is direct. It is direct from one aspect, direct knowing, immediate knowing. It is not a thought that comes to ponder upon. It is not a new understanding as such. It comes as a direct experience, as a direct knowing, which also doesn't require meaning, to wonder what is the meaning of this or that. Because these are the meaning, understanding, analysis, and contrast, contemplation are all processes. And processes are slow comparing to direct knowing, immediate knowing. Immediate knowing is instant. And the processes are, they take time. So that's where come the teaching of stopping the mind, but that needs to happen naturally. You can't just force your mind to stop, or meditate yourself into stillness. You can do that, but that's not the actual meaning of direct knowing or direct insight. So it requires certain completions of the mind, of the processes, that one becomes more and more comfortable with the trusting more direct insight, direct experience. So the mind always takes time. It likes to compare, it likes to contrast, it likes to like, it likes to dislike. It likes to be engaged with. The mind likes to keep you busy. And even when one is more advanced in meditation, the mind becomes more collaborative, more assistive. And then it also gives you some good ideas. It gives you, it finds other ways to keep you busy. It gives you new inspirations, new ideas, new things to be excited about, which are all good as such. But yet again, if you notice closer, you might get caught up in them, even in the good qualities of the mind. So even if the mind becomes your friend and becomes helpful and assisting, you still want to go beyond it, and you will notice that that is how the mind tries to keep things going. Now in a more harmonious way, in a more supportive way, but it keeps things going. It likes to maintain its presence. It likes to be engaged with. And in reality, when we observe closer, we realize that even those things are not really necessary. Even those things, they narrow you down. They still create that lighthouse effect of your focus and attention, and they narrow you down into those processes. So there are very subtle mechanisms that like to keep some distance because they're comfortable, because they're familiar. Normally, the mind tries to avoid the unknown. It tries to avoid the discomfort. But when we shine our conscious awareness to these subtle mechanisms, how the distance is kept, we gain the necessary strength to be able to let go even of those. And the mind comes into a little mode of anxiousness because it gets cornered. But if we approach it gently and softly, it will not resist too much. It will be illuminated with the light of the self. So this is different than many sayings of trying to get rid of the mind or kill the ego or kill the I and this and that. They're drastic approaches which of course are not comfortable. Thus they create a bit of fear, and even those who are fearless, they become the fearless warriors, they get used to fighting, and then they make the mind into their enemy. They make their ego into an enemy and they fight with it, and that's another game. Yeah, it's a fearless game, but it's another game. So a more natural approach is to step by step notice what processes are no longer necessary. Just like a beginner businessman, makes everything complicated and everything chaotic, and then optimizes the processes to be more efficient, and then recognizes, oh, this is no longer necessary. There's an easier way. And then they find their niche, they find what works, and thus many things that don't work are no longer necessary. So the same way we closely observe what is happening inside, and we notice, oh, this is no longer necessary. It's a process, and unless you feel that you still need it, you can also ask yourself, what does it give me? Or why do I need this process? And there will be a good reason for that, because maybe it makes you feel safe, or it gives you all other kind of sensations and feelings. So you navigate gently through those processes to arrive at more and more easy and direct, immediate way of being. And that is called stopping. In its essence, it's stopping the unnecessary processes. Releasing, letting go, and unfamiliarizing is a very natural way to navigate through it. And many years ago, I realized at the very beginning of my inquiry that I had too many things that I don't need. Too many thoughts that I don't need, too many emotions that I don't need, too many processes that I don't need. And this realization, this single realization, was so valuable because it allowed me to check what's actually going on. So the self is simple, is immediate, it is instant, and thus it is spontaneous. Thus it is easy. Jesus has made a quote that to enter the kingdom of heaven you must become children again. And the Buddhists mentioned that you need to unlearn. First you have to learn all the way of Buddhism and all the new things, how things work, but then you have to unlearn everything, to simplify everything. And the Ascended Masters also say that you need to become innocent and wondrous as a child. And the innocence of the child and the wonder of the child is the quality of the self. It is that ease and joy and lightness. And whenever you think of your childhood, if you had a good childhood, you will remember how carefree it was, how free you were, apart from control of your parents. But everyone can recall that freedom, that wonder, that magic in the air. So that innocence, simplicity, wonder, freedom are the qualities of the self. And on the way we see a lot. We see all the mechanisms. Some people become spiritual warriors and they fight with the negative and this and that. And they get caught up in this fight. The same way the self-enquiry warriors become caught up in the fight with the ego self. There's a story that Archangel Michael got caught up fighting with the negative entities, but then he realized that he was drowning in those wars, in the fight, and then he remembered that he has to return to himself. So all the sages, all the masters say the same thing, that it is not a path of fighting. It is a path of becoming innocent again, free from fighting. No matter how difficult the path was, you want to be healthy, isn't it? You want to be free. You don't want to be a worn and beaten up veteran. Worn out, traumatized, and beaten up veteran. So you want to be fresh, you want to be alive, you want to be joyous, free, and loving, and kind, and all these qualities are of the self. So therefore, as we flip the coin, we realize the growth that is necessary to have the self-awareness, to keep an eye of vigilance on what's going on here and now, so that we can be free. And that is the freedom. It's not a careless freedom. It's not a hippie freedom. That freedom has an instant awareness. It can instantly recognize what's happening. It can instantly navigate and move. I call it being a surfer. Surf the waves. When I was a teenager, I had a dream to surf. When the life circumstances aligned, and in the early years of adulthood, I was in a tropical beach, and I finally got the board and my surfing instructor, and we started catching the waves, and I realized what a big job it is. So my teenagehood dream got crushed by the waves. And I realized it's just not worth it. Pedaling and being beaten up constantly by the waves, just to have that moment, a few seconds of riding the wave, feeling that freedom. I realized, I can do that easily in meditation. It's a lot easier than spending half a day pedaling for those few moments of catching the wave. And then I realized I'm the surfer of energies. I'm a pro surfer of energies. Whatever they are, surfing them. Knowing when to move. Knowing the nature of the waves of the energies. The currents. The cycles. So the same way the self is aware, it is aware of the energies, is aware of what's going on. And it immediately knows what to do or what not to do. And it's not the knowledge that was gained as such. It's not the strategies of the mind. Next time I shouldn't say this. Next time I should keep quiet because I'll make somebody more angry. These are the strategies of the mind. Of course, they're necessary to keep more harmonious relationships and gain some experience of life. But the wisdom of the self is more immediate. It doesn't keep the knowledge of the past. Then it lets go of the knowledge. It lets go of what it has learned to be more free. And there's this trust of letting go. There's a trust of no need to hold on to anything. And thus it is the openness itself. The openness itself is not holding on to those juggling balls, and it doesn't juggle things like in circus. So the openness itself, it trusts, it has let go of juggling energies, juggling situations, sweating, trying to keep things in harmony. What a big job to keep things in harmony. In the more intermediate stage, you do need to learn how to keep things in harmony. You do need to learn how to manage the energetics, how to not get involved, and how to keep a bit of distance or this or that. And then you go through these lessons, you go through these processes so that you can be free and at ease, so that you can trust fully the intelligence of the present moment. So since you have gone through this process, then that is the freedom. You're now open, you're now free. And you can be yourself too. You have learned or seen all the ways of your personality. You have learned and seen all the good parts and difficult parts and your angelic parts and your naughty parts. And you don't judge the naughty parts or try to keep the angelic parts and pretend to be a angelic saint. I'm a good boy or I'm a good girl. And to pretend that you don't like a sweet or a little glass of wine if you want to. Or that if you have a relationship that you don't get intimate and to pretend to be a celibate saint and so on. So wherever is in your life, wherever you are, you are. And you may notice that judgment or that doubt, is this a good thing I'm doing? Am I not supposed to do this because now I'm spiritual? You let go of those doubts. You let go of those judgments. And even you let go of the self-conscious. You let go of the self-awareness in the meaning of self-conscious. Because you trust the openness. You let go even of the virtues. And the virtues are the highest qualities, but you have to let go even of the virtues. Because sometimes the self might be in the animation movies of Krishna, he was always naughty as a kid. Like a little monkey was always in his nature. Always being a little bit mischievous. But innocently. Without any bad intentions. Just stealing a little, like some honey or some sweets, mangoes. I never had a thought that I'm doing something wrong. Yeah, there is never judgment as such. Of course, it doesn't mean that you go to a supermarket and you don't pay for it. Yeah, but you can enjoy life. You can have fun in life. And humor is a good measure of the spiritual maturity. And especially when you can laugh at yourself and your own ways, that is the highest measure of the maturity of personality or transcendence of personality. You can laugh at your own personality and at your own self, at your own ways. That is already a transcendent personality. So that innocence is present. It knows the challenges. It has seen the ways of the dark. It has seen the troubles. It has seen the fights. But hasn't drowned in them. Didn't become beaten up and ended up suffering because of them. It has remained fresh, alive. So I usually give an example when people ask me, what's the best way to protect myself energetically? Increase your light and love. Increase your light and love. If your fountain of light and love is only this big from the floor, and if you pour in the bucket of oil, it's going to struggle. It's going to struggle to clean itself off. But if the fountain is many meters or 10, 20 feet high, or even more, and if you pour the bucket of oil, it's going to refresh itself very soon, very quickly. It didn't affect it so much. The self-purification happens very quickly because of the capacity of this light and love, and other qualities as such, peace. So that is the best protection. It's not about hiding in the corner and trying to avoid trouble. So you may see how the mechanisms of fear and avoidance or denial keeps you hiding from life, keeps you more limited. So thus, building that strength and capacity and wisdom and growth is a necessary process. Nakedness, vulnerability, ability to admit one's mistakes. That's a good one. Oh yeah, I made a mistake. Sorry. It's not a big deal. Another assumption that people may have, that once you are enlightened or in your full consciousness of the self, that you will never make a mistake anymore. You'll be perfect. That you will know everything, how computers work, how to be a programmer, how to be a scientist, a rocket engineer. That's not the case. Or a good chef, or a doctor, or that's not the case. This is the relative knowledge. That's the knowledge of the world. That is a professional knowledge, academic knowledge. That knowledge it has its own process to be learned, to be perfected. But yet when you are as the self, in the self, you will have a better grasp of whatever you're doing. So I remember some years ago I had to complete the annual accounts of the company. It was a good 10 years ago or so, and it was very specific to that country. And I went to an accountant and we sat down, and then he was saying, okay, it seems you have filled up half of it already, let me help you with the other half. And as he was helping me out, he's like, oh, you're really getting it. You could be a good accountant. And accountancy was never my thing. Never ever. And also biology was never my thing. And then getting some good grasp of how things work. So whatever comes your way, you may have a good grasp of it. You are very present. You're fully here now, attentive. And the same with construction. My father has golden hands to make all things with hands. And as a kid, I would stand by and say, "Yeah, I can hold you this screwdriver. I can give you a hand, but I have no idea how this works." And then in the last 5 years, life put me in a situation, with renovations and making our center and so on, to manage contractors and to manage handymans and plumbers and electricians, every socket, every pipe, every screw. And that was fine. It was a challenge, but being so present, it was fine. I was curious. There was a curiosity and wonder and interest. So many things that were difficult in the past, or that were avoided, became easy, became more doable. And then, of course, whatever is your thing really flowers. And if you want to get your hands dirty and do some gardening, you will love it even so much more. And cooking, or being a professional, accounting, and whatever is your thing, you will love it so much more. Managing people, it won't be a burden anymore. It'll be more of a joy, and giving them some good tips and advice, and helping in their life too, not only managing the business as such, as much as they're open, not trying to convince them of anything or turn them around, convert them. There is also no need to prove anything anymore. No need to try to show that you have to become spiritual. I remember the movies and the Zen stories of the humbleness of the Zen masters, or realized beings. They would own a little herbal pharmacy shop in China. There's an old guy, owning the herbal shop, and that's how he was making his living. But if somebody comes and they're a little bit more open, they can give a little life tip as well. Yeah, some herbs that would help out, and also what would help them spiritually or mentally, emotionally. There's no need to become a monk or a nun, or to disconnect from life, from people around you, from your families and friends. I had that thought at the beginning of my journey, because I thought this would be easier. It would be easier just to go to a monastery and just give time for that. But one foot was keeping me in life. No, that's not your way. You still gotta focus on your profession, on the activities of life. And part of me was wondering why life is not allowing me to disconnect and just go to the woods and just meditate all day long. And then something inside me did not allow to do that. And then as time went by, I realized more and more that you gotta follow your life path. You have to be yourself. The self is not the escape. The self is yourself. And many seekers seek for escape. Most of the seekers seek for escape. So they idealize the self, that when I get to the self, my problems will disappear. The money, whatever, I'm not going to worry about it. And family will like me, and my kids will adore me, and everything will get fixed. And many of these are idealizations, assumptions. Avoiding having a proper conversation. Avoiding getting a job. Avoiding resolution of past problems with certain people. So there's a lot of avoidance that follows, that many people seek to escape. And there's a saying that the escape is inside. The door is to go within and to open up. And to gain that strength, not to avoid the suffering, but to meet it. Not to avoid the challenges, but to meet them. So in that meeting is that you grow in your capacity. And then people hear the stories that, oh, this guy was suddenly awoke and nobody knows how, and he doesn't know how, he just awoke. And then now he's a teacher. And that person as well, they just awoke and they become a teacher. And these stories go round and round, and many get fascinated by them, but they don't know that when these sudden awakenings happen, that these beings were processing those awakenings. They were sitting for a few years to integrate, to still process everything. And then, bit by bit, started to open up and to engage with the world and to come back to the world. Now, these are more drastic shifts and more rare. And there's nothing to be fascinated about that either. It is actually more harmonious to go to open up gradually, to open up more integrally, more harmoniously with your whole life. It is more recommended way. And that's how actually majority of people open up. So when we go through these processes and growth, this is what liberates us. This is how charcoal becomes a diamond. That's how all the beautiful things come to be. That's how a beautiful garden is made, because there's a lot of work put into it. That's how Mother Nature took millions and billions of years to come to this stage of beauty. That's how your soul flowers and awakens. And as we recognize the way, then we align with this way, the way of Tao. There are many traditions speaking of the way. So thus we come into that stream of ever-growing perfection, ever-growing beauty, ever-growing love and peace. We have learned many things on the way, and we align with the way, and we become the way. And that is the way of the natural self. This is how we live as the self.